Okay, so are you ready to like dive into something that could like totally change how you see the US economy?
Yeah, let's do it.
Whether you're prepping for a big meeting or just trying to like keep up with the financial world, or even if you're just like really curious about where all this money comes from these days. I think you're going to want to hear this
Yeah, this is a good one.
because today we are talking trillions.
Trillions with a T.
Yes, trillions of dollars, national security, and nothing less than the future of the US economy.
And to guide us through all this, we have Richard Duncan.
Oh, I like Duncan.
Yeah, and he's not just, some talking head economist. This is someone who practically predicted the 2008 crisis.
Yeah, he called it.
Like when he talks global institutions, like actually listen.
Wow.
So this is the real deal.
Okay, so what are we diving into with Duncan today?
So we're tapping into a speech he gave, and this is key directly to the people who control the purse strings.
Okay.
The House Ways and Means Committee.
Oh, wow.
This isn't theory, folks.
Right.
This is the inside scoop.
I like it.
And Duncan's argument is basically that the U.S. economy has gone through like this fundamental shift.
Okay.
We've moved away from a gold-backed dollar to what he calls creditism.
Creditism. Okay. I think I'm going to need a little help with that one. What exactly does that even mean?
So it's like this, think of it like the economy used to run on a system where every dollar was basically like a ticket.
Okay.
That you could redeem for actual gold.
Oh,
Friday.
yeah, like back in the day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now it's more like a promise.
Okay.
And let's just say we've been making a lot of promises.
So instead of Fort Knox like overflowing with gold, it's all built on,
Trust.
trust.
Pretty much. It's a system where constant credit expansion is what fuels growth.
Okay.
And it really took off when we ditched the gold standard back in 71.
Yeah, 1971.
To give you an idea of how much things have changed since then, the Fed's assets have increased by a staggering 90-fold.
90-fold. Seriously. I don't even know what that means.
It's a lot.
Yeah, but like, what does that actually look like?
It means the amount of money the Fed can just create out of thin air has gone through the roof.
Wow.
We're not shipping gold bars around to settle trade debts anymore.
Right.
It's all about credit now.
Okay.
This lets us have way bigger trade deficits, which the U.S. has, let's just say, fully embraced.
Oh, we have.
Yes.
And I'm guessing this is all connected to like why the national debt has gone from, what was it, less than $1 trillion in 1980 to
31 trillion in 2022.
Oh boy.
And that, my friend, is the price tag of running an economy hooked on credit. So we're living in this world now where like trillions of dollars in debt.
Yeah.
It's just the new normal. It's
Yeah.
like we're all on this this credit treadmill.
Yeah.
And we just keep running and running.
And what happens when the music stops?
Exactly. That's the big question. Right?
Yeah, because it sounds like we're like teetering on a high wire here.
It's a risky game for sure.
So what does Duncan say we should do about it? Just like throw more money at the problem.
Well, yes, but not just blindly throwing money around. He's talking about like a more strategic approach.
Okay.
He sees this whole credit-fueled system not as like a doomsday scenario,
Okay.
but as an opportunity to think really big.
Okay.
He proposes this multi-trillion-dollar investment program,
Okay.
and he wants to focus it on what he calls industries of the future.
Okay, so what are those?
These are the fields where like major breakthroughs could like totally reshape society as we know it.
So like less about building more strip malls and more about like, I don't know, flying cars and
Think even bigger.
okay.
We're talking artificial intelligence,
Oh.
quantum computing, genetic engineering,
Oh wow.
like areas where with the right investment, we could see breakthroughs that could solve like some of the world's biggest challenges.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, so like curing diseases, creating limitless clean energy,
Okay.
radically extending the human lifespan even.
Okay, those sound amazing,
Yeah.
but also like a little sci-fi-ish.
Right.
Like how do we even begin to like wrap our heads around funding something like that?
Yeah. That's where Duncan's argument gets really interesting.
Okay.
He says, look, we're already spending trillions, right?
Well, yeah.
The national debt is proof of that.
Right.
But instead of just like servicing that debt
Yeah.
or just maintaining the status quo, why not channel that spending power into something truly transformative?
So like actually invest it wisely.
Exactly. To give you an idea of the scale he's talking about, he uses the example of a $10 trillion investment spread out over 10 years.
$10 trillion.
There's 10 trillion.
I mean, I know we just threw around the word trillion like it was nothing.
Yeah.
But that's still an insane amount of money.
It is a lot, but remember, this is the same country that borrowed $2.8 trillion in just 3 months back in 2020.
Oh, right.
And Duncan points out that, like, at the peak of its money printing, the Fed could have funded the entire Cheap Capes Act in less than 70 days.
The Chick-Copies Act. Remind me what that is again?
Yeah, that's the one with billions of dollars towards semiconductor manufacturing, you know?
Right, right.
It's a big deal.
Okay, I see your point. But even if we could pull off something like this, wouldn't pumping that much money into the economy just like send inflation through the roof?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
But Duncan argues that the rules of inflation have changed.
How so?
Globalization,
Okay.
with its ability to source goods and labor from all over the world, has fundamentally changed the inflation game.
So we're not all just like fighting over the same slice of the pie anymore.
Exactly.
Okay.
He points to decades of data showing that inflation has actually stayed relatively low, even as government debt has skyrocketed.
Interesting.
So we're playing by a different set of rules now.
Okay. So if we're going to do this, invest in these industries of the future, how do we make sure the government doesn't just get bogged down in all the bureaucracy?
That's where Duncan proposes a really innovative approach: joint ventures between the government and the private sector.
Interesting. So like a team effort.
Exactly. Think of it like the Manhattan Project or the space race,
Okay.
but on a much grander scale.
So the government provides the funding, sets the overall goals,
Right.
and then the private sector, they handle all the details.
Exactly. They bring their expertise, their speed to the table.
I like it. It's like a win-win.
Exactly. The government would take a 60% equity stake in these ventures,
Okay.
which ensures a return for taxpayers,
Right.
while the private sector gets 40% and retains control over how these ambitious projects are actually run.
Okay, that's a pretty clever model.
Yeah.
It kind of bypasses all the red tape while also making sure that these potential breakthroughs, they benefit everyone,
That's the idea.
not just like a handful of corporations.
Exactly.
Okay, so what kind of timeline are we talking about here?
Yeah.
And like, what are the potential downsides?
So before we get into the how,
Okay.
Duncan also wants to address the why. Like, why is this so urgent?
Right, good question.
He sees China's rapid rise, especially in areas like R&D, as a major wake-up call for the US.
Okay,
It's not just an economic competition anymore.
Right.
It's about global influence, national security even.
it sounds like we're in a race we didn't even know we were running.
In a way, we are. He cites this pretty alarming statistic. In 2019, China surpassed the US in total R&D spending for the first time ever.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And he argues that if current trends continue by 2030, they'll be investing 40% more than us in research and development.
And what does he say the implications of that are? Like, besides just some bruised egos?
He argues that in the 21st century, technological leadership is national security. Whoever wins the race for breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotech, they set the agenda for the future.
So it's not just about like who has the biggest army anymore.
Exactly.
It's about who has the smartest scientists, the most cutting edge tech.
Exactly. And he argues that if the US doesn't step up its game, we risk falling behind not just economically, but geopolitically as well.
So what does that even look like? Like, paint me a picture.
He goes so far as to say that if China wins the race for AI dominance, it's game over for the US as we know it.
Wow. Okay, so the stakes are high.
The stakes are very high.
So we're in this race for the future, right? And China's gaining on us fast.
Yeah.
But even if we're like, okay, this is a Sputnik moment for the US,
Yeah.
the question still is, how do we actually pay for all of this? We're talking trillions of dollars. Where does that kind of money even come from?
That's where Duncan gets really interesting. He says we need to rethink how we even think about financing these massive projects.
Okay.
Forget about the same old tax and spend debates.
Right.
We got to get way more creative if we want to compete on this scale.
So if we're not talking about raising taxes or slashing the budget, what's the alternative?
Duncan points to the Fed,
Okay.
specifically their ability to just create money
Oh boy, here we go.
through quantitative easing.
Right, QE.
Exactly.
That whole printing money thing that everyone was like freaking out about a few years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
But isn't that how we got into this mess in the first place?
That's a common concern for sure. But Duncan says this time it's different.
Okay, how so?
He's not talking about just flooding the market with cash and hoping for the best. He's proposing a much more strategic and controlled expansion of the money supply,
Yeah.
targeted specifically at these high growth sectors that we've been talking about.
So it's like using a laser instead of a floodlight.
Exactly. Focusing the resources where they can have the biggest impact.
And this is where those public-private partnerships come in, right?
Exactly. By setting really clear goals and metrics for these joint ventures, the government can ensure that this new money is being invested strategically, not just spent willy-nilly.
So we're talking about like investing in things like clean energy, disease prevention, advanced manufacturing,
All that and more.
industries that could potentially not only like reshape the global economy, but also solve some of the world's biggest problems at the same time.
Exactly. Seeding the ground for the industries of the future.
And I like that the 60-40 equity split ensures that taxpayers are along for the ride.
Absolutely.
Any breakthroughs will benefit both private companies and the American people.
Everybody wins.
Okay, so it's a bold plan, I'll give you that. But it also sounds like a lot could go wrong. What does Duncan say to those who think this level of like government intervention is just asking for trouble?
He gets that.
Yeah.
He knows some people are going to hear this and be like, government picking winners and losers. That's not how the free market works.
Right.
But he argues this isn't about replacing the free market at all.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that some of these challenges are just too big and too complex for the private sector to solve on their own.
So it's more like setting the stage, creating the conditions where innovation can actually flourish and everyone can benefit.
Exactly. And he reminds us that this kind of bold, future-oriented investment is actually like deeply rooted in American history.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Think about the Manhattan Project, the space race.
Right.
Those were massive government-funded endeavors.
They were.
And they yielded incredible technological advancements and economic benefits.
It's like he's saying we've done it before, we can do it again.
Precisely. But this time, the stakes are even higher. This isn't just about maintaining our economic edge. It's about preserving our way of life, our position in the world. Duncan really believes that we're at a crossroads right now.
Okay.
We can either continue down our current path, or we can choose to invest in a future where the U.S. remains a global leader.
And not just for like the next decade, but for the next century.
Exactly.
It's a powerful message. And I have to say, it's kind of contagious, this idea that we can actually choose to shape the future, even with all these massive challenges.
And that's really the heart of Duncan's argument. He's not just presenting a set of policy proposals.
Right.
He's issuing a challenge, a call to action. He believes that we have the resources, the ingenuity, and yeah, even the moral obligation to tackle these issues head on.
So where do we go from here? Like, what can we as individuals even do when we're talking about these global forces?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
Duncan says it starts with us demanding more from our leaders.
Okay, I like that.
Demanding that they think long-term, that they invest in the future, that they don't shy away from these bold solutions. He wants us to think bigger, to imagine a future that's not just about surviving, but about thriving.
I love that. It's a powerful message and one that I think really resonates, especially now.